So now that you've had that background on the box model, it's time to put it into practice. This probably will be graded as extra credit on your next quiz study guide thing, because it's a pretty straightforward little exercise, and I'm going to be doing it for you. When I do these things for you, I hope you're getting the idea that then you have to actually be able to apply this, like to your resume, for instance. And you definitely should use the resume, use box model in the resume. Of course, you can use it for margins. You may already be doing that. But on the other hand, you'll notice that a lot of the spacing that you wanted to work with, and you tried to earlier, I told you not to use things like BRs for extra spacing or line height on things that weren't reading copy. Now, if you decide that every H2 needs more space above it, you use the box model to do that. So use the box model especially for spacing, and maybe for some other things too. We used to use box model ideas in a lot of more flexible layouts, but these days we don't use those things so much, as we have some new systems and technologies in CSS to handle that. Okay, so here we go. So yeah, you can make a root folder name box model last name or box in your name or something like that. In the folder download, there's a file to download from Moodle. It's a HTML document. Open it up at ++, of course, run in the browser, and then there are instructions here which I will kind of follow, but instead maybe you just want to follow me in as we work along and do it here. And of course I've got it right here. And I'm going to run it and see what happens. You should put in your appropriate information in the title, of course, which I have not done. A bad example. Let's run it. And, oh my gosh, what's this? Of course, what I have on there, as you noticed just a moment ago, and you should probably notice in your own, is I have a universal selector forcing with actually an important. I can show you the use of that. It says, really, really do it. A 2-pixel solid purple border around everything. So everything from the body, which is the big box all the way around, to block, quote, headings, a little inline element. All those things have got borders around them. We can mess with the inside of the border, the padding, the border itself, and the outside of the border in any number of ways. So let's give it a try. First thing we got to do though is get rid of that, because that is really annoying. So please just delete that out. So now if I save it and run it, you'll see I've got this kind of like a header area, and then another more body area with some lists and stuff like that. Okay. All right. So the first thing we want to do is notice that we're using the box model when we apply a margin to the body, which is all the real content, right? And if I want to have, remember the TRBL method, top, right, bottom, left. If I were going to write all those numbers down, it would be 0, there's no commas here, 15%, 0, 15%, and semicolon. Right? That would be top, right, bottom, left. So top and bottom I want 0, and right and left I want 15%. Notice that is the same thing as this. This means top, right, left, bottom. Notice that it's the same thing as this. If I can use just one number, of course. I could use 15%, but that would apply to top and bottom too. I don't really want that. If I want top and bottom of 0 and right and left of 15%, that's how I do it. Any of those methods would be fine, actually. And of course, now I have got those margins. Percentage-based margins are nice because they flex. Okay, we want to make this header area a certain width. Let's say 700 pixels, and then we want to center it. So we have a situation where we're centering a sized thing. That area is the header area right here, right? So we're going to tell that header to have 15%. Oh, sorry, 700 pixels width. That's just width. Remember, no space with the units. And, well, we'll leave it like that first. Save and run it. Okay, It's got that, but what's going on here? It's got to be centered. How do we center something? Some people would think, can you use text-align center? Nah, that's not going to really work properly. Could you use float center? No, there's no such thing really. Centering size things is actually harder than it looks. We have to do a little trick to do it. And we're going to use a margin of auto. So when you have a size thing, you can center it with a margin of auto. Okay, it centers, that's nice. You can notice we'd like to have a little padding on the inside. How about a padding of 32 pixels? Padding. So I'll run that. So it gives me a nice little space around the inside of the box, okay? But do you notice how there's like extra space in the top of the box? Well, why is that? Here's the thing. Some of your elements, especially headings, come along with them, bring with them some margin already. So we have that margin, plus we have the padding inside the box, and those things kind of combine. If you tell your H1, you have a margin of 0. So go find my H1. What's the difference? Look, before and after. See the space? All right, so that brings us to another point, is that honestly, most times when you're manually making pages like this, honestly, what you'd begin with first is a reset file. A reset file would put margins and paddings, everything to 0, and then you start from there, and you start and build them up all together. We are not doing that, but I want to show you that idea of resetting an item. So its internal attributes like margin and padding don't carry over and kind of add to the things you're doing. All right, so we did that. Now I noticed that the H2 element here in this header area, maybe I think it's a little bit too far away from the this text here. Okay, if I decided that, let's say for whatever reason I decided that, so I want to get to that stuff. Well, that's obviously not all H2s, it's just a certain H2. And I'll show you the kind of precise control we can have. So to get that, we need to have a descendant selector. So this is not in the header. We're going to type a new selector. Hashtag header H2. So go to the header and find that H2, which is different from other H2s. Okay? And inside that header, let's say margin bottom. Remember, we can get to an individual part of the margin and say minus, we can do a minus margin, 0.25 EM. Let's say you just want to take a tiny bit of space out someplace, like that. And semicolon, of course, right? And we change the space now. Let's see, before and after. Just a tiny space. So it's little additions and subtractions of usually margin all around the page. Perhaps you decide it's every certain thing, like every H2 is going to have a little bit of change or something like that. Or maybe a particular one like this. All right, so we did that. What are we going to do next? Let me just take a look at my list. We use the margin bottom property. Yes, we did. Now we want to add 3 EM of bottom margin to the header div. So we're going to say, as I do think is the case, that these are too close. Remember, things that go together, like this area here, should be separate from things they don't go with, like this whole area down here. So we add some extra space in there. How about 3 EM bottom margin on the header? That's easy to do. We already have the header. Let's put some blank lines in there. Plain old header, margin. And even though we've done margin auto already, we can still do this. It's just affecting one little part, 3 EM. So we're going to save that and run it. So what do? See the space before and after, before and after. little bit of space change there. Actually, pretty good amount of space change there. All right. And what else are we doing? Again, excuse my rustling papers, look at my list. I want to remove a 0.25 bottom margin from the H3 element. See my H3? To bring them a bit closer to the text that they're header of. So that would be the kind of little precise control I could get. I'm going to go down to the H3s. H3 elements. And I'm going to go margin bottom minus 0.25 EM. Removing margin, negative margin. Okay, so these are the H3s. So before and after, before and after. I think they hang together a bit more with the stuff that you want there. Probably above them we need a little more space, or at least above the second one. So well, I don't know, you could look at it. So that's the kind of fine tuning that we can do. And what else? All right, now we're going to add a dotted style border. We're talking about decorations, we're talking about borders now. Borders are handled a little differently. This is going to be to the H2 in the header, so we can get to that right. We're going to do a border bottom, a bottom border. Look at it that way. Anyway, so this H2, putting like a line in there. And this is one way to think about it. So we got to get to that H2, and we already have started that right here. Let's do a border. We're going to do a border width, a border color, and a border style. Do them as separate things. And then you can also look at the possibility of doing them together as a shorthand altogether. But it's nice to see them separate too. Oops, I spell it right. Border width. So what did we just do there? TRBL, right? Top right, bottom left. So 0, 0, top right, bottom, 4px, 4 pixel, width of border, and 0. So if you assume there already is a border there, it's always just a 0. If we just change one side, we could have done border bottom width, but we can do it like this. Either way, it's the same idea. Then we can do border color. It will only affect the one that has width. So we can make it all one color. And let's do an RGB color just for a change. What's in the parentheses is what's important. 200, comma, 160, comma, 160. And then we'll do a border style. Again, only one side has width, so that's the only one it's going to affect. Let's save that. So we get this nice little border there. If you thought that was too tight, of course, we could move it around with margins. Okay, what else are we going to do? Now I want to use that same border, but around the entire header area. Imagine the decorative border all around that header area. But we're going to use a shorthand code, which you can read about in your book. So let's try this. Header. We're going to do a border, and we're going to put 3 numbers in here. Well, 3 units in here, not just numbers. 3 things. Of course, those things are going to be how wide is the border, and because we say border, we're doing it to all sides at once. What style is it, and what color is it? But the truth is, we can write these in any order we want. So I'm going to say 4px dotted, and then I'll use the same color, which I'm going to go and grab and not have to retype. And then a semicolon. Right, we'll save and run it. And there we go, all the way around, nice border. And I'll let you test this yourself. If you change the order of those things, the 4px, the dotted, the RGB, it will still work. Border, it doesn't care what order they come in, it knows which is which. Okay, so how big is this box? That's the whole thing. Is it's the border, the true size of a box, and the effective size of a box, size with margins and so on. How you figure that out is sometimes not quite intuitive. We're using the default box size method because we haven't done anything else at this moment. And that means, well, I know we made the box 700 pixels, so 700 pixels, right? No, is it really? We have the 4px on either side, and we have padding in there too. So the width of the box is 700 for the content, 32 pixels on either side, so that's now 762, plus 4 on either side, that's 8 more. So I said 64 plus 8. You do the math. So in other words, it's not a 700 pixel wide border at all. It's the width of the content plus the padding plus the border, which is added on the outside really. And if we had margins on here that were actual margins that were pushing things, if it was some other kind of container, like one that wasn't centered, then we would have effective size that would be even bigger because the margins would be added on the outside. What if we truly want something that is 700 pixels wide, separate from margins, of course? Well, we could use a different method. We could use this box sizing command here. When we use the special box sizing method here, the variant method, as was discussed in your the presentation you can read about in your textbook, now it sizes the box. The true width of the box that you ask for is the width you get. In other words, padding and border are taken out of that number. So you don't have to type this, you can just release this code. And then you'll get that sizing method. This is how we would do it for that header, which is the only real box we've been playing with in that way. So here we go. Why does this say WebKit? Why does this say Moz? And why does it say box sizing? This is the border box method. Well, this is one of the first times we've seen what are called vendor prefixes. These are specific codes that affect certain browsers that can't handle it exactly. They have special needs. When we have some newer type of commands like this in CSS, this is where we start to see CSS break down a little bit. It's not quite as universal as we would like to think that CSS and HTML are. We're seeing that we have to have a command for one browser and then a different command for another browser. Eventually, this stuff usually gets consolidated under one command, but with the newer commands, this often happens. So that's what this has. That's what these numbers are doing. If I save this and run it, the box got narrower, but truthfully, the box became truly 700 pixels from there to there, as opposed to before, was 700 plus the border plus the padding too. Okay, that is the end of that exercise or that demo. Think about how you're going to apply this stuff to your resume in the future, and we'll move on to something else in a few minutes.